I wanted to make a quick video about overcoming objections with your clients due to this NAR settlement. I heard yesterday about a listing agent who is having a hard time with a seller because the seller was under the impression that if he just waited until the NAR policy changes went into effect, which is in August, if the seller just waited a few months, he wouldn't have to pay a buyer's agent, which of course is a huge misconception. So we know that come August 17th, that's when these policy changes are slated to go into effect. And really, it boils down to two big changes. One is no buyer's agent commission will be displayed on the MLS. Number two, if you show a home, you must have a buyer representation agreement in place. That's it. So what's the net effect to the seller or the consumer? Well, if you're in a situation where you have a client that's telling you that, I would simply ask where the source of information comes from. Because of course it's nonsense. I mean, they'll have no explanation for it. But here's the other thing too. Nothing is going to change for the seller because right now, as we speak, the MLS doesn't require buyer's agent compensation to be entered. So you could voluntarily opt out. And of course, commissions have always been negotiable to the seller. The seller has always been able to negotiate. And I've heard many stories over the years even, not just recently, of sellers that didn't want to offer cooperating broker compensation, or they try to change it, or if there's a reduction, they want to reduce the buyer's agent commission. So that sort of negotiation has always existed. And you can tell a seller that. You can say, look, nothing's changing. I mean, it can't be displayed on the MLS, but it'll be displayed another way. In fact, I wish the MLS would come out with some sort of definitive information about what exactly they're going to institute, because as I've spoken about before in other videos, the MLS has stated that they're going to create a seller concession field in which any sort of seller concession, which would include a credit to a buyer for the buyer's agent commission, will go on there. And as it stands, that's the most likely way that any sort of compensation for the buyer's agent will be negotiated on the MLS. Now let's pretend for a second there could be no compensation offered on the MLS and there wasn't a concession field. It doesn't matter because a buyer's agent would either just blindly ask for a commission in the offer or with a CBC form or with a phone call. Or a buyer's agent might call the agent when they're writing the offer and they'll say, look, I'm going to ask for 2.5%. What do you think? And the listing agent will say, well, I don't charge enough to pay you, but we'll ask the seller if they'll pay. Either way, it's going to get worked out. It's going to get worked out over a phone, or it's going to be streamlined with the seller concession field. So what does that mean for a seller that's thinking they're not going to pay? It's absolutely false that they're not going to pay. It's no different. The only difference that we will see is a seller possibly paying the buyer's agent or buyer's agent broker specifically directly. That's it. Because as it stands, the listing broker currently charges a commission and shares a portion of that commission with the buyer's broker. Well, if for whatever reason a seller feels emboldened from misinformation or a rumor and refuses to pay a buyer's agent compensation in the listing agreement, you can state that's fine, but they're still going to ask for it. They're still going to expect it. You're still going to get an offer with the buyer's agent asking for a commission. So how you package up that knowledge and understanding of how there's a minimal change to the seller, then that's how you deliver it is entirely your approach. But what I'm saying is ultimately the net effect for a seller is slim to none, because at the end of the day, if it's not the listing broker asking for the commission up front in the listing agreement, it's going to be the buyer's broker when they write an offer and they ask the seller to either pay commission directly to the buyer's broker or ask the seller to make a concession and credit the buyer to offset the buyer's obligation to pay a commission in the representation agreement. Okay, the other big change is the buyer representation agreement, of course. So you tour a property, you must have a buyer representation agreement in place. The good thing is every realtor is on equal footing with this, and they can play good cop, bad cop and say, look, I never required it before, but now it's a required document. It's out of my control. It's part of the Association of Realtors, or it's part of the settlement or whatever, but it doesn't make you look overly aggressive to push a buyer representation agreement, because lots of agents have been skittish about pushing that on their client because prior to the settlement, prior to the policy changes going into effect, a buyer could say, Well, there's 3 other agents I'm talking to and none of them require a buyer representation agreement. Why is it you want me to sign this exclusive contract with you? So that conversation will be gone, and it'll just be a matter of every agent presenting a buyer representation agreement, and how they deliver it. Of course, it's going to be tailored to your personal approach, how you like to deliver your presentation, but just know that every other agent is going to do it. Now, there are a couple of questions that I did see I wanted to answer just because I'm already making a video, so I might as well bring it up. But I did see someone post online on a realtor forum, will lower transaction volume, because of course there's less volume just simply because of higher rates and people being locked in due to having a lower rate. But they're asking, will lower transaction volume lead to less realtors? Well, the answer is no. Now, it may lead to a less aggregate number of realtors, but what you're insinuating about there being less competition or about it clearing out the overwhelming amount of the supply of realtors, that will never go away. There may be less realtors in whole, numerically speaking, but there will always be more of a supply of real estate agents than there are clients. And that is just, the message in that is you need to get better with your marketing, and you need to be more specific and targeted. You need to be a niche. When there's a zillion restaurants, you need to ask yourself why the one restaurant that has the one location or the one restaurant that only does one thing sets themselves apart. It's the same thing with the agency. There are a zillion agents, there always will be, even if the aggregate number falls or rises, but there will only be one agent that has a certain thing about them. And that's why successful long-term agents always brand in their personal name, because they're monopolizing a brand as that one person with that one name that does this certain area or this certain type of real estate practice. And then this other question is, my broker takes 2 to 3 weeks to pay me. Is that not normal? No, it's not normal. It means one of two things. Either the office is extremely inefficient, or the broker's in a cash crunch and they're playing whack-a-mole with their bills and trying to pay you whenever they can afford to. Either way, you must run from any brokerage that can't pay you very fast. Now, that's of course considering that you've turned in all your paperwork, but if your paperwork is squared away, you should be paid right away. No questions asked. Anyway, thanks for watching.